Yo, 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 yo. Hello, hello, hello. Greetings to all who are witnessing this. On behalf of Derek and I, welcome to Hidden Movie Club After the
Yay!
Credits,
Yay!
where we try and see as many movies as we can in the theater that come back to the theater.
Or on physical
Um,
disc.
or on physical disc if it's just one that's not getting the chance to be released for an anniversary go round, whatever. But yeah, we did, as you may have known from the thumbnail on this particular live stream, we are going to be talking about Fight Club, the 1999 David Fincher classic with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. And for those of you who want to, because the whole idea of doing this particular movie came about because it is going to be in theaters with a brand new 4K restoration, remaster, whatever you want to call it. I haven't explicitly read this, but I can only imagine David Fincher is behind anything that is re-released that he has done, because he's not the kind that just lets studios do their own thing and lets cash grabs happen because whatever, the studios are suffering and they need to put out something new from their old catalog.
I
No,
hope
man.
he is involved. I hope he is involved.
Yeah, because it just seems like anything he puts his stamp on, he's like, no, man, you're not touching that unless I get a say. Unless it's like Alien 3, because he doesn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So yeah, it is in the movie. Like, both Derek and I noticed that it is playing at our local movie theaters tomorrow, April
But only
22nd.
tomorrow.
Yeah, but only tomorrow.
And only
So
one showing at the theater by my house. So
yeah, mine
unfortunately.
too. So yeah, if you have a chance and you're listening to this, you're watching this or whatever, and you can go and see this in the theater tomorrow, April 22nd. In my town, it was at 7 p.m.
Same.
Um, yeah. So if you can do it, do it. I would love to see this on the big screen, but I just don't have the time to fit that into my schedule, especially because it's in the evening and I got young kids or whatever, and it's a Wednesday. you know, it's not exactly prime time to go see a movie. Wednesday
Yeah.
evenings.
I'll definitely be buying it when it comes out on disc. Whatever the 4K is, that's one of those that, as you probably saw, I've bought this movie multiple times. I have it on DVD. I've bought it on Blu-ray. So 4K is, especially if it's a Fincher supervised
Mhm.
release, then I need to own that.
Yeah.
Nobody's taking that away from me.
Right. Out of your cool dead hands. So overall impressions. When did you watch it for this
Uh,
podcast?
so as with most of our films, I've watched it multiple times in the last week.
Mhm.
I watched it last week, I believe, like Thursday or so. I watched it last night with my wife because she kind of came in at the end when I was watching it last week and was like, "Ah, Fight Club, I love that movie."
Mm.
So then we watched it together, and then I actually watched it this morning again, just in preparation for this, with the commentary that had David
Yeah.
Fincher, Brad Pitt, Ed Norton, and Helena Bonham Carter. Awesome.
Whoa.
Yeah, awesome commentary. The only thing that's slightly misleading is it's very clear to me while watching it that Ed Norton, David Fincher, and Brad Pitt were together while filming the commentary, and Helena Bonham Carter was recorded separate, and then they just kind of
Aw.
stitched them together. But the fact that we got commentary from all of the the primary cast, and then also the director at the same time, and whether it's combined or not, it was great. I actually kind of want to go and watch it again because there's also a commentary with just David Fincher, and then there's also one with Chuck Palahniuk, the writer of the original book, which I
Oh.
remember when this movie first came out. I read the book first, and then saw the movie as kind of just like oh dang, they're making a movie of this book, and
Mhm.
very very cool. Very, very cool. Just like if you've seen, we've talked about Project Hail Mary a few times, and they stick pretty close to the book. There are some changes here and there, for pacing purposes and for some story purposes.
Mhm.
But I think overall it's a successful adaptation of the book. And I might even say I think I like the movie better than the book,
Yeah.
because there's a couple of changes that they did make that I think just fit the style of the story a little bit better in the movie. Namely stuff like, well, for one, Tyler Durden's whole appeal, or like his whole
Mm.
look. In the book, he was more like a surfer bro Jesus. Whereas here he's got like the spiked hair, weird thrift store kind of guy. Um, Gosh, what else? The whole plot line of them making the soap
Yeah.
was that. Have you read the book?
No.
Okay, so in the book, they steal the fat to make the soap from Marla. It's her mother's fat that she saved from a liposuction clinic to give herself lip injections, if I remember, or something like that. She was going to use it to give herself lip injections or something crazy like
Yeah.
that. Also, at the end of the book, spoiler alert for anybody that has not read the book, the narrator dies. Or not, sorry, he doesn't die. They put him in a mental institution. So at the
Mm.
book ends with him in a mental institution, and it's kind of the same thing. They moved some stuff around, but in the book, all the scenes from the movie where they're nodding like "Sir," like "We got this, sir,"
Right.
that happens in the mental institution at the end of the movie, where he's trying to convince them that he's not insane or whatever, and they're like, "We know,
Oh.
sir," and then they give him like
Wink.
the wink. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else is different from the movie. Like the order of some of the things is different, but for the most part, a lot of the iconic scenes are in the movie.
Hmm.
Oh, Marla has the kiss on the back of her hand in the book too, if I remember
Oh,
right. So
yeah.
she's like that. I think wouldn't play well for the movie, because then it'd be kind of obvious, like that there's something else going on. Like how could she not remember? Or how could Tyler, or I guess Jack, or whoever narrator that you want to
Yeah.
call him? Which actually, that was another thing. I don't know if it's in the first book or the second one, but the narrator is not Jack. His name is actually like Sebastian or something like that.
Oh,
So he
interesting.
is, yeah, he is actually named in the books, because there's multiple Fight Club books. I think there's even like some graphic novels and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And he's named Sebastian in those, but I think in the first book they never mention that, and then like it's like right at the beginning of the second one, um, they mention that. So anyway,
Just curious, since you read the book before you even knew that the movie was being made, back then, how did you get wind of books like that coming out?
well, I didn't actually find out about it before the movie was made. And I don't know if maybe this is a fun fact, because I don't remember it being in this close of proximity. But I found the book. Geez, how did I find the book? I want to say, honestly, I want to say that I first read it on an ebook. I had one of those like Casio Windows Pocket PC phones,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
would download like ebooks for that. I got an ebook reader, and I think that was one of the few books that was available then as an ebook.
Oh,
So I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna I might as well read this. It sounds cool. It sounds kind of like you know at the time I wouldn't identify myself as like a libertarian, but I was very much into like the free spirit, nobody tell me what I want to do.
mhm.
Again, I would think I was like in college when I read that or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I was like, okay, this book sounds interesting. And then when I downloaded the book, the movie, like the announcement for the movie came out almost right after the book, if I remember it right.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I think I read somewhere in like reading about the movie and the production and everything, I found out that the producer who first brought the movie to the studio actually optioned it before the book even got released. Like he got some kind of like pre-release copy, or some family member of his was working with the publisher, and so he saw like the first, I forget what they're called, but they're like the printed drafts of the book. You know, when they do the
Manuscript?
first, no, it's like the first run. Like the book was
Oh,
already
okay.
done,
Yeah.
it had been edited, and the print house was like doing the layouts for them.
Ah,
And
yeah.
somebody that he knew worked for the print house, and so he, I guess, read the book and was like, I want this, I want to make this into a movie. And so he took it to his people at the studio, and they were like, no, there's no fucking way we're making this. And actually, that was one of the things that he credited, if I'm remembering the article right. He said that like the list that they gave him of reasons why this book should not be made into a movie, and it was everything from like gratuitous violence to like a pro anarchist, pro fascist, pro
Mm,
whatever messaging, whatever. He was like, this guy clearly didn't get the book. These are all reasons why this movie has to be made. And
right.
so then, they kind of went from there, and it was like the fact that that guy got it so wrong is just another reason why we have to make this into a movie. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think I just honestly read the book off of chance. It was because it happened to be one of the few books that was available as an ebook really, really early on.
Mhm.
Um, and from
I know
there,
that honestly must have been the early days of just the concept of an ebook, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, it was. I don't even remember what format it was. I want to say it was like an early variant of EPUB or something. Because
Yeah.
again, there weren't very many books that you could actually get for it. But the nice thing was, is they had a bunch of like the Palm Pilots. God, I'm dating
Right.
myself. The Palm Pilots back then, you could install apps on them just like you could on modern smartphones or whatever.
Mhm.
But like Palm Pilots were the black and white kind of like dimly backlit screens, and these
Right.
Casio pocket PCs came out. I want to say it was called like a Cassiopeia or something. I might even still have it around here if I'm being honest. But it was actually like nice to read because it was like a nice bright LCD screen.
Yeah.
And you could, change just like with a regular ebook, you could change like the size of the fonts and stuff like that. So you could kind of customize it to how you wanted. And I think even at the time, this had to have been around like 2003, 2004 or something, when I was getting rid of the Cassiopeia thing because there were newer things, and I think the last book that I got for that thing was like the first Harry Potter book. And I don't
Mm.
remember exactly like what the timing of that was, but it had to have been like around the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So that was probably right when Harry Potter was coming out or whatever. So I think ebooks just started hitting their stride at that point.
Yeah.
So Fight Club must have been right around what, 99?
I mean, that's when the movie came out.
Yeah, I wonder
So maybe 98.
when did the book come out?
Yeah, because it seems like,
96.
oh, wow.
1996. So it was definitely after 1996. It was probably like 98 or
Yeah.
something like that, because I definitely was in high school and I graduated in 2001. So
Yeah.
definitely in high school. But loved the book. I thought the book was just, again, really cool. It kind of opened my eyes to the whole idea that books could really be more. uh, the book itself was about more than what the book was about, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And that didn't really like dawn on me until, I mean, I guess it did in some ways, but like Fight Club was the first one that was like very clearly a social commentary. It was a satire. And even, watching the movie now, I couldn't get over the fact of how many similarities I saw with David Fincher and like Paul Verhoeven, and just the way that
Mm,
they deliver the satire. Because it's not just in the story, it's in the way that they film it, and the way that the shots
right.
are done and everything. So, again, I'm definitely biased about this because I've been a fan for so long, but I really, really enjoyed watching this movie again, especially with the commentary, like just seeing it through a fresh set of eyes and hearing
Mhm.
about some of that cool production stuff that happened in the back. I'm just really impressed with the whole thing.
So before we decided on doing Fight Club, when was the last time you had seen it?
Ooh, at least 2 years ago. It's been
Yeah.
at least 2 or 3 years. And actually, if hold on, now that I'm thinking about it, it probably was like, yeah, 2024, 2023, 2024. Because it was I don't remember when the Steelbook released, but probably when I purchased the Steelbook.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'd gotten the Blu-ray for the 10th anniversary edition.
Hmm.
So that was, whenever
2009.
2010, 2009, yeah. So
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, for me, it had been actually quite a long time since I had seen Fight Club, and I mean, yeah, like it just it brought back a lot of memories.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I'm actually surprised how well a lot of the CG still holds up. Like, I
Yeah,
know one of the things that I really love about the way that David Fincher used the CG in this movie is that it's like it's stylistically done. So it's not going for hyper realism. It's going for like almost absurdist realism. And so it's
right.
still kind of it still looks good. It still fits in with the tone of the movie. And even like I read somewhere that or no, it was in the commentary when they were doing the initial Blu-ray transfer. I guess the Dolby guys came to him and like pointed out quote unquote issues with the transfer that they were doing. And it
Mm.
turned out that they had actually like added grain and noise and added what is the silver nitride or whatever to get
Oh,
it even grainier to give it that like that really, really nasty, just kind of worn in look.
uh-huh.
And so when they were doing the remaster, they're like, yeah, we're gonna have to clean up like a ton of this. And they actually point they actually point out, which is something I want to talk about a little later. So I don't
Hmm.
want to get too far into it, but the number of clues that there are about the twist is
Yeah.
crazy when you watch it in hindsight after the fact, after the first viewing. But the
Yes.
the Dolby guys noticed that in the scene with the car when they run off the freeway when he lets go with his hands and they're just driving, they
Yeah.
pointed out to him and they're like, "Hey, just we're watching this and we noticed and can we mirror this when we release it because Brad Pitt pulls out the narrator from the driver's side of the car." and, and
Oh.
in the commentary they're just like, keep watching the movie. So I think that stuff's fun. Duppy, what's up?
That's
And Duppy,
cool.
we trust. Yeah. Who did they
Yeah.
4K it with?
Um,
I don't know. Let's.
like who did the 4K? Like what studio?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I mean, yeah, he makes a good point about, because there are a lot of CGI sequences.
Yeah. There's a ton
Um,
of them. There's a
that's
ton of
that's
them.
one of the things I wanted to talk about because David Fincher is so known for utilizing CGI, but in such a way to make it invisible. Um, that's just like his thing. So like that was one of
20th
the
Century
things.
Studios, it looks like, is the answer to Duppy's question.
20th century. Okay.
Yeah, he's doing it directly with the studio, and he's
So
supervising it. So that is great news.
technically, technically that's Disney now. But as
What's
far as
not
their
Disney now?
physical media, they have given their physical media to Sony.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
or at least
Anyway,
distributing it.
sorry, you were saying
Um,
about the CG.
yeah. So like, that's one of the things that kind of struck me was like, wow, there's just for somebody like David Fincher who is so gung ho on like, I want it to be real. I want practical effects. I want real sets. Maybe we'll do some set extensions and just make a lot of CGI things hidden, just to keep the cost down, whatever. Because I've seen plenty of David Fincher breakdowns of that exact thing where like, oh my God, like that was CG, like those cars in the background or that extension, those buildings in the background are totally fake. They're not even there. Like you wouldn't even be able to know that unless you watched the behind the scenes. But
Mm-hmm.
in Fight Club, it's probably also just a product of its time. But in 1999, there are so many shots that are just complete CGI, like the whole beginning credits, the
Yeah.
shots where it's going through, it's basically panning up through all the trash and then coming out of the trash can.
Mm-hmm. Well,
It's
the
going,
scene where they first showed all the vans with the explosives, they're like, it literally
yeah.
cuts from one part of the city and it runs through like blocks and blocks of the city. And they actually mentioned in the commentary, I forgot to go back and do this, but apparently if you pause, if you go frame by frame, they
Mhm.
actually built like, in CG, like the whole thing. You can see like people in the buildings, and they said there's like a janitor's closet that it zooms through, and whoever did the CG for it just like meticulously, because they didn't want there to be a point where you like stopped the or freeze framed on something
Yeah.
where it looks, like just a box with nothing in it or not like a real place. They were very, very meticulous to make sure that every frame looked like a real place.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's like, because that kind of floored me. I'm like, that's usually because I mentioned this to you via text message the other day. It's like it is such a David Fincher film, and yet not at the same time,
mhm.
because there is such heavy use of full-on CGI scenes. But I mean, it's granted, it's serving the story well. I totally understand why he did it, because he just had this particular vision, and the only way to accomplish that without it costing, $100 million extra, is to just do it all CG. But
Well, I
like,
feel like the majority of the CG is stuff that is just impossible to do physically. Like
yeah,
some of the stuff, there's just, the scene that you mentioned from the garbage can coming
right,
up, or that opening where they're going from his amygdala all the way out, through his brain, up through his throat, and then out
yep,
to the gun. Like
right,
you're not going to be able to do that practically or with miniatures or anything, because just you can't fit a camera like that. You can't use a
exactly,
camera like that. So the
yeah,
majority of the movie that's not impossible physically is practical. It's all real. They're all filming it.
hmm,
I can't think of, other than the sex scene, uh, any character stuff is almost all real. Like there's maybe
yeah,
2 or 3 scenes with the characters where they had to do like a CG takeover a little bit. The sex scene being one of them,
right,
because they're going all around them and under them, and the camera's kind of
right,
like pivoting everywhere. It's really cool though. But I think David Fincher, like to me, it's in service of the art. Like this is one of the people I
oh, for
saw.
sure,
A bunch of people online, will talk about this movie sarcastically as like, oh, this is just what pretentious people call this movie art, but really it's just like a dumb bro flick. I disagree with that sentiment completely. This is, if there is a movie that I would consider art, it's this, and I think the CG
hmm,
lends itself a lot to that, because it's really only used when it has to be, because we're
yeah.
talking about something that's legitimately impossible to film.
Yeah. Or like when it's going through all the various, like behind the fridge and through the stove, like
Mm-hmm.
before the apartment explodes,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. Obviously, also impossible to
Yep.
film.
Or zooming in on like the wires when he's like in the van trying to figure out which wire to detach to keep the
Hmm.
bomb from going. They zoom in on the timer and then the cables. Like that's also impossible to film. Actually, you will appreciate this. I'm glad I just thought of this. The scene where Tyler Durden is giving his little "You're not your fucking khakis" speech,
Yeah.
and the camera is like shaking or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, 2 fun facts about that.
Uh,
Number one, the shake is all done in post production,
yeah.
because they tried to do the shake practically in camera, and the camera operator, who I want you to guess who it is because it's amazing. Uh,
Oh.
they filmed it once with the camera operator actually shaking it, and the camera operator was like, "No, this is dumb. Let's just go in, and then you can do all the other stuff in post."
Yeah.
But guess who the camera operator is? No looking, no cheating.
The camera operator.
Yes, I'll give you a hint. We've covered related movies multiple times.
One of the Cohen brothers.
No.
Dang
One
it.
more guess. One more guess, and then I'm going to spill the beans.
The camera operator was
We've
um
talked about a person that is related directly to this person. In fact, they share a name. I'll give you that.
Uh,
Come
I mean,
on,
it
spit
wasn't
it out.
Conrad L. Hall, was it?
It was. It's Conrad L.
Really?
Hall's son, Conrad W. Hall. Conrad
No
Hall
way.
Sr. is the camera operator on Seven and on Fight Club.
Wow. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
and I learned that from the commentary because they were like, uh, they're talking. David Fincher and Brad Pitt are talking, and he's like, yeah, I just remember Connie Hall saying that it was, blah blah blah, and I was like, wait, what? And I looked it up. It's his son. His son is the camera operator for most of David Fincher's movies,
Oh, wow.
and then eventually, graduated to DP just like his dad. But
Mhm.
yeah, he's the camera operator on this,
Well, now it makes me want to see what Conrad W. Hall has done
right?
recently.
Right. Well, we're gonna see one next week or this coming week when we watch Seven. So
Yeah.
it'll be very, very interesting. But yeah, I thought that was a fun fact.
That's cool. Yeah. Um, so yeah, like it's the CGI. I mean, I'm when I talk about CGI in David Fincher, in Fight Club especially, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
overdone. I'm just saying like it was surprising,
Hmm.
um, just because of all the other things I've seen David Fincher do. Um, but yeah, like because again, it makes me, because of all these weird shots and impossible shots that you couldn't have an actual camera do, that again seems like something just kind of out of left field for David Fincher, because he
Hmm.
always loves to have everything in camera, and he always loves to,
Hmm.
like Christopher Nolan loves to have everything in camera and as much practical effects as possible. Um, so for him to just kind of toss that out for some of these shots, just be like, yeah, whatever. Let's just let's just do it CG, and then we can whip pan. And because that was another thing I noticed, is there's a lot of camera motion, a lot of
Yeah.
whip
And
pans
some
and
of that
stuff.
is actually real. I thought a lot of the camera stuff was CG too, but some of it, a good portion of it, is actually real. In the commentary, they actually mention that the scene where Marla first comes, and it's the morning after her and Tyler hook up or whatever,
Mhm.
and she walks downstairs and does the whole gargling and that.
Yeah.
There's some shots where it, like, whip pans to Tyler and he's like, don't talk to her about me, and then it whips
Right.
back, or not, sorry, it wasn't that one, it was the one where she comes down the stairs and she's like, the condom is the glass slipper of our generation. That scene, because that's a oneer, they filmed it all in one
Oh,
go. And then he said that his biggest disappointment, David Fincher, he said that they cut multiple places to add because it didn't match up with the narration. They had to retime it, so they had to
ah,
split the oneer up to time the narration correctly. But
yeah.
if you watch it, it's like, there's a whip cut, boom. Then they follow him. It moves forward. It moves back. It whips to her coming down the stairs. She leaves. It
Mhm.
whips back around to Brad Pitt. Apparently, that was all one take, all done in one
Dude.
shot, and they had to mess with it.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's such a good point too about David Fincher, because for somebody who, again, I think the CG holds up really, really well and
mhm.
really does kind of just fit the mood of the
Exactly.
movie. And
Yes.
I'm very surprised by that, not just because David Fincher doesn't do that stuff a lot, but also the fact that, like, how many first time, not first time directors, but, like, a lot of times directors that don't use CG make a lot of mistakes when they're filming stuff, because you're not used to that pipeline. You're not used to, like,
Yeah.
what the designers and the artists need to get effective CG to get to the point that you want. So I'm, like, even more impressed by the Fight Club stuff, because even the scene with the IKEA furniture, like, popping up in his room and stuff like that. Yeah, Duppy kind of mentions it, not for the same reason, but that IKEA scene where they're dropping stuff in, like, a director that's never done that kind of stuff before, that's never done tracking like that, and that doesn't know, like, that to me means that David Fincher saw that, even if he didn't know how to do it, he saw that in his head
Mhm.
when he was, like, visualizing what he wanted this movie to be in
Yeah.
all these different ways. And then he just kind of, like, trusted the people that he was working with. So, like, kudos to not just him, but kudos to the team that was responsible for that, because
Yeah.
like again, for somebody who doesn't typically do CG stuff, to nail the CG in such a way that 26 years later, 27 years later, I'm still like impressed by it and still feel like it fits the movie really, really well, and thematically just kind of like it's pretty seamless.
Yeah.
It never took me out of the movie, because it was like, again, it's like that absurdist hyper realism
Right.
rather than just trying to be photorealistic.
Yeah. But yeah, Debbie brings up a good point. Like, even with those like fully CG shots in particular, coming out of the garbage can, going through the stove, whatever, how well will it translate to 4K?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's probably, I mean, even watching it on Plex the other day, it's pretty obvious to my eyes that it's, a fully CG shot. But again, it like didn't take me out of it, in a way where I was like disappointed. It was just like a mental note, like, oh yeah, that's CG.
Mm-hmm.
But then I moved on, and then
Mm-hmm.
the movie continued. Like, so it wasn't like,
Yeah, and again, it's mostly because I'm like, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that has to be CG, because what it's showing is impossible. Like
yeah,
there's literally no way to get cameras to move that quickly, or to zip, 30 floors up a building, or
yeah.
across multiple miles of city and whatnot. So it's like, how else would they have been, like, it reminds me of, do you remember the original HBO intro that they would have on cable? It was like a camera came from like the Hollywood Hills and zoomed like across the, through city streets or whatever, and it
Oh
ends
yeah, yeah,
up at a
yeah.
theater with like the HBO logo. So I learned not too recently, but a little while ago, that was practically filmed. That is
It
not
was
an
just a miniature,
animation.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a miniature. And
Yeah,
so like when I'm thinking about that, that was like initially what I thought that they did for that first scene where it like zips across the city. And it's not.
yeah.
It's all just CG. And I even thought that it was like a miniature with like a CG takeover to get into like the detailed stuff. But it was
Mhm.
like, no, they were like, what's the point of building all these sets for a shot again that takes like 4 or 5 seconds to shoot through, just to end up where we want to end up? And then that's when they started talking about the like, yeah, actually, even though it's 4 seconds, like every single frame was like meticulously crafted so that if you stopped it at any point and freeze framed, you would see everything about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Duppy. Sorry, I'm like, like everybody sees what Duppy's saying.
It's less about just knowing it's CG and more about the transition between CG and the actual film with its natural grain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
man.
even I read, because a couple other fun little facts that I read about while watching this is that the whole cigarette burns thing, that is not an industry thing. They don't call them cigarette burns.
Right.
Yeah, so like when they were making the movie, and again sending it to the printers to have it copied for theatrical release or whatever, David Fincher had people walking on the film so that like boot prints show up in like random parts of
No
the
way.
the frame. Yeah, there's like a
Yeah.
ton. There's apparently a ton of things that they did to like make it even dirtier, because he said specifically the shot with them zooming in on Tyler, where the film goes out of the gates. It's like
Yeah.
flapping, and you see kind of like the sides of the actual film reel.
Right.
He was like, that was too dirty, and the film grain wasn't dirty enough, so they wanted like some of those transitions to be even dirtier, so they literally like dirtied them up. And then when the Dolby guys got their hands on it, they were like, yeah, there's some dirt on it that we want to clean up. And he's like, no, no, don't do that. And then I also learned that Chuck Palahniuk is the one that coined the phrase snowflake for like people,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah, the all singing, all dancing crap of the world.
Yeah.
You're not a unique and special snowflake or whatever. That's where the term comes from.
Huh. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, he just said that he started getting sick of people acting like the main character, which is crazy to me that this movie and the book are so old. You know, he wrote it in 1996 or whatever,
Mhm.
and now it's like a thing that everybody uses the term snowflake for anybody that, you know, is like critical of things that they probably shouldn't be, overly critical, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's funny how that stuff kind of like took on a life of its own.
I don't know about you, but I owned the Fight Club soundtrack on
Oh, I definitely.
compact disc.
Hmm.
I listened to that religiously. Um, it was constantly in my like main rotation of CDs. So I know that album like the back of my hand. Because because again, David Fincher, he's so well known for just how meticulous he is. He always gets, all of his films and all of his works, even Mindhunter on Netflix, they all just have this look to them where it's like, dramatic shadows and this color palette and everything is, there are bright moments, but it's mostly dark. The mood is mostly dark. He just tends to gravitate towards those kinds of stories.
Yeah, you know why he says that too? Don't forget your thought, but in the commentary, he mentions that he hates seeing actors' eyes.
Oh,
So he said he always underexposes his footage because he doesn't like when you can clearly see an actor's eyes, which I thought was so weird because like
whoa.
80 to 90% of acting is like in the eyes.
Yeah,
And
right.
he's like, they actually complain because the scene where they first step down into the basement, he like really loved the shot. They kind of like walk into the bar and it, pans around to everybody and then they go down the stairs. And he
Yeah.
said that one of his biggest disappointments, or that like he was really pissed at that scene because they had all the lights turned off when they go downstairs, and he wanted it to be like a really big contrast that when they pop the lights on, like you can see everybody, and it's just not as big of a difference as he thought it was going to be, just because of
Oh,
the way the film is exposed. Like everything is kind
yeah.
of in like this mid brightness, so that when the lights turn on, there's like this initial thing, but then it all kind of like, just settles in and it's like
Oh,
basically the same. So yeah, yeah. So he doesn't like seeing the actor's eyes.
wow. I mean, yeah, looking back on it, or just, looking back at Fight Club, yeah,
Hmm.
I can see that. Huh. Um, so anyway, again, like David Fincher using, you know, dark, broody, moody scores, like orchestral scores. Um, that's kind of his, although, more recently he's definitely been leaning on Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross
Hmm.
more frequently. But again, it's dark, moody, broody, electronica, and just Nine Inch Nails type of stuff.
He wanted
Um,
Radiohead.
he wanted Radiohead.
He reached out to Tom York about doing the soundtrack to Fight Club, and they had just finished touring for OK Computer's release.
Mhm.
And Tom York was like, as much as I would love to do it, I have to turn it down. Like, we're just exhausted. We don't have the time. Like, we don't have the energy to do this. So Dust Brothers were actually his second choice. And I'm kind of glad that it went that way because,
Yeah,
man.
because that's the other thing is like out of the pantheon of David Fincher films, having a soundtrack done by the Dust Brothers, just like hip hop producers and people who you know dig for records and samples from those records, like it is such a unique and off the wall bizarre soundtrack, but I love it. It again, it just fits the mood so perfectly, even being something that Fincher normally doesn't do ever.
Yeah,
And
agreed
like,
wholeheartedly.
because it just to have that kind of wherewithal, like, well, Dust Brothers are my second choice because it is this type of story, even though it doesn't sound like anything I've ever done before or approved before to be in my film. Like, yeah, I'm so glad that he just had that thought, in his mind, if I can't get Radiohead, then I'm going to go with Dust Brothers.
Yeah, the crazy thing to me too is that like the songs that I remember most from the movie, like obviously the opening theme is super memorable.
Mhm.
Just that drive, that dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. But what's cool about that is I love that like sequence of music is the motif that's found everywhere in the movie. So
Yeah.
even in the more uh ambient type of sounds when stuff is going on, like even in the IKEA theme when they're going through it and it's like that
Yeah.
it has that
Right.
so it's like really cool because they have those like thematic elements that repeat through the movie, but they're
Mhm.
played by different instruments or they're timed differently to like fit the mood. I can't believe it's just incredibly well done. It's so
Mhm.
cohesive to me as like a score and a soundtrack that
Yeah.
it's like kudos, just kudos all around.
Because I believe that I don't think Dust Brothers ever did a soundtrack before that, and
Ooh, I
maybe they've
wonder.
done one since. Not a lot, but that's the thing, is like that's what I love about the Dust Brothers, is they're just so, their approach is so weird because they sample the weirdest samples. Like
Hmm.
stuff that you wouldn't think would fit in a particular mood or a particular song. They just throw it in there and put their own little spin on it, and it's like it's just so memorable.
Fight Club was their first film as composers. Beastie Boys' Shadrach music video was the only thing that they did prior to that, according to IMDb.
Yeah, because that's one of my favorite Beastie Boys album is Paul's Boutique, which was produced by the Dust Brothers,
Yeah.
because the samples are just bonkers. And they literally have a sound that nobody else has. So I think that's why I really gravitate towards them.
I forget what the scene is, but they mentioned that in the commentary that one of David Fincher's favorite things that the Dust Brothers did in the movie is there's like an old like folk song that's in there. I think they said it was like a Yiddish folk song or
Mm.
something, and they couldn't get the rights for it because they couldn't figure out who actually owned the rights for it. So
Yeah.
the Dust Brothers recreated it for the movie, and it's so good. Like again, I forget the scene that it's in, but if you go back and kind of like watch, there's like a very I don't know, it's just like a folksy thing that happens a couple times, and it's very cool. And apparently they re-recorded the whole thing. He said that they listened to it a couple times, they got what he was going after, and then when they
Mm.
presented it to him, he was like, "This is even better than what I anticipated." Like, I'm glad we didn't have to use the original because this is so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, like, but you know, Beck Odelay is one of my
Hmm.
favorite albums,
Yep.
produced by the Dust Brothers.
Hmm.
And then Wero, a later Beck album, was also produced by the Dust Brothers.
Hmm.
And yeah, they just have this really cool, unique place in music history, just because of how unique they are. And yeah, I don't know any other producing duo that sounds like that.
Hmm.
So I'm a fan, clearly.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. And yes, I mean, had the soundtrack when the movie came out, listened to it, on actually, I think I listened to it so many times that I had a CD burner. I think I made a copy of the CD just so that I didn't like wear out. I thought you could like wear out or like overplay a CD. So I had like a copy. And I remember because I took the little booklet and scanned the booklet, but our printer was like a laser printer, so it was only black and white. So I
Yeah.
had like a black and white version of the cover art in like one of those slim cases with the
Right.
with the CD. And my dad was like, "Why do you have two of these?" And I was like, "Just in case."
In case the other
That
one
and
gets
the Snatch,
scratched.
that and the Snatch soundtrack were the two that
Mm.
around that time I was like obsessed with.
Yeah, Snatch is a
I really love
great
those two.
soundtrack too.
Yeah, and maybe related, maybe not, but it's like another, since we're talking about music from the movie, another little musical fun fact about the film.
Mhm.
The waiter in the restaurant when Jack and Marla go, and Jack is kind of trying to like explain to her, hey, you're in danger, just listen to me, give me 15 seconds or whatever.
Oh yeah.
The waiter in that scene is Ed Kowalczyk from the band Live, who was a
Ah.
friend of David Fincher's and I think Brad Pitt's, and was like, hey, can I be in your movie? And they're like, yeah, come on in.
Is he the singer?
Yep, he's the lead singer. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Fun little tidbit for your next trivia night.
Let's see what else. Also music related. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I took a couple notes on this.
Yeah.
The all singing, all dancing crap of the world. That line is from the book, also Sprach Zarathustra, which is only musically related because that's the name of the theme song from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Ah.
And the only reason I know that is because my dad used to play that on vinyl all the time to test when he would get new speakers and new stereo
Oh
equipment.
yeah.
He would play that, and he would always be like, also Sprach Zarathustra. And I'd be like, what are you even saying? So when I read that, yeah, you're the all singing, all dancing crap of the world is a direct reference to that book, and that's what inspired the name of that classical composition.
Whoa.
Let's see.
Coming at us with the facts, Derek.
Yeah. I think that's all the music stuff that I wrote down.
Good.
Yeah, that's all the music stuff that I wrote down.
But it makes you want to listen to the soundtrack.
Seriously. I do want to talk about another thing. Because I had mentioned it briefly before. What are some of your favorite tells in the movie that give away the twist? So like, having seen it before and now watching it again in hindsight, there's several places where the movie gives away what the twist is well before it actually happens in the movie. And I have a couple favorites, but I'm curious if you have any favorites of that. We're seeing it after knowing how the movie ends and what the twist is. What were some of your favorites?
I do really like how Tyler Durden pops up in like one frame.
Yeah,
Where
multiple times.
he's got his arm around somebody that
In a support group.
Edward Norton's character's talking to, it's like,
Yeah.
boop, there's Tyler. Like,
Yeah.
because I always like to try and, spot them as the movie's going on. Just because, again, it's like, I love little things like that where you got to be paying attention, in this day and age where people are on their phones a lot watching films. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
can't really. I mean, if you've never seen Fight Club before, this is one you're not going to want to, casually
sleep on
watch.
this one.
Yeah. You don't want to be, you want to have your undivided attention on the screen for this one. But I don't know. That's really all that jumps out at me as far as like little things that I enjoy trying to pick out as the movie progresses. But
actually, that reminds me too. In the commentary, they mentioned, which I would be pissed because I hate when stuff like this happens. Apparently, Rosie O'Donnell spoiled the movie the day after it came out on national TV because she was talking about how she didn't say she hated the movie, but she said that she couldn't stop thinking about it because it was disturbing and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently she spoiled the twist live on air, and Fincher is like, both Brad Pitt and Fincher were like, unforgivable, absolutely unforgivable, which I agree with.
Yeah, the day after it comes out, come on, Rosie.
Yeah, really, really bad. Okay, let's see. My favorites, I think, are, well, there's a couple. I definitely agree. The little flash frames of Brad Pitt are really, really excellent. My favorites, though, are the ones like the one that the Dolby guys mentioned, where like when they're pulling him out of the car and it's the side that Tyler was originally on. There's another one where the crap they're getting out of the car. I don't remember. I think this when they're leaving the bar,
Mhm.
and a driver pulls up. It's like in the rain. A driver pulls up the car, and he's like, "It's all ready for you, Mr. Durden." And he's looking right at Ed Norton, and Ed Norton
Oh,
turns to Brad Pitt and goes, "After you, Mr. Durden." And he goes, "No, you," or whatever. But the sight line, like the guy is very clearly looking at Ed
oh,
Norton. So if you're like paying attention, you're like, "Oh shit." And then same thing with like Marla. Whenever Marla is talking to Tyler, he never talks. So like the
right.
whole scene where Tyler listens on the phone because the narrator like leaves the phone on top of the hook and doesn't hang up. He doesn't
Yeah,
say a word that entire time. So like if you're paying attention and Marla opens the door and you might think, whatever, it's probably not that big of a deal, but she pulls him into the apartment or whatever. And then
right,
later on, she references how he came over and played doctor. But she's talking
right.
to Ed Norton, to Jack, to the narrator. And so it's like all those little things. I'm just like, ooh, so juicy.
Yeah, I know. I like movies like this that have a twist like that, and then I wish I could watch this movie for the first time over again.
Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
then I would be like, oh my god, they're the same person. Oh, I
Yeah,
have to watch it again now.
it's crazy because I feel like most movies, like if you watch something, and spoiler alert for all these movies, but I'm gonna try to avoid saying what the spoiler is. But
Mhm.
if it, I feel like just by virtue of talking about it, it infers that there's a spoiler. But like The Prestige, if you've watched The Prestige, that also kind of has a thing that once you've seen the movie, if you go back and kind of watch it, it's mentioned at several points, and it's like it's almost so in your face that it's hard sometimes for me to even imagine that I didn't notice it while it was happening in the movie, because it's so
Mhm.
overt. I mean, it's literally like they spell it out multiple times, and like this is one of those movies where watching it in hindsight after you know the thing, or Sixth Sense, that's probably a better example, like
Yeah.
Sixth Sense, if you saw that going into the theater blind and didn't know what the movie was and what the story was and all that stuff, like at a certain point in the movie, you want to go back and rewatch it because you're like, holy crap, how did I miss all this stuff? And this
Yeah.
is one of those movies that's like full of little moments like that. The spot, they're like discussing, what historical figure you'd want to fight or whatever. I think it starts in the bathroom, but then
Oh
they're
yeah.
like they're getting on a bus, and I now I can't not see it. But the
Mhm.
guy that gets on the bus after them, when they look at like a Calvin Klein ad or something, they're like, is that what manliness is, or is that what being
Oh
a man
right.
is? And the guy bumps into Ed Norton and says, "Sorry, buddy," but passes right past Tyler. So
Yeah.
like they almost make it so it looks like he's literally like passing through him a little bit, because he
Mhm.
doesn't move at all, and the guy just walks him back, but he only acknowledges Ed Norton's character. And then the scene, it's like right before when they give up the twist or whatever, he walks into a bar, and a bunch of those guys, there's cooks and stuff in the kitchen. They're all going, his name is Robert Paulson, his name is Robert Paulson,
Yeah.
or whatever. And when him and Tyler walk into to another bar previously, all the guys only look at Ed Norton. They don't ever look at Tyler. And like once you see that, once you know that, if you watch the scene again after the fact, it's like, oh my God, yes, none of them are looking at him. He's like in front leading, he's the guy, but they're not looking at him. They're looking at the guy behind him. It's like, oh my gosh, how did I not notice this before?
Man, to be honest, I didn't notice most of what you listed just there because I don't know. I just get I'm well again, it's because I haven't seen it in a long time. So I was just enjoying being able to watch it again. So I
Yeah.
kind of got wrapped up in that. And I was just like, hey,
Well,
I'm
and
having
honestly,
fun.
I definitely didn't notice those things the first time watching. I've noticed a couple of them when I was watching it with Kelly, and then on the commentary track, like they mentioned some of them, like
Mhm.
the being on the wrong side of the car or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's there's a ton of them that, like, the first time I watched it again, it'd been 2, 3 years since I saw it, so I was just enjoying it as a viewer. But when I was watching it with Kelly, I was more like, okay, I'm gonna try to pay attention and like see what
Yeah.
are the little things that I notice about stuff. Like I always wondered why um uh David Fincher said in an interview that every single scene in the movie has a Starbucks cup somewhere in it. Every single
Oh,
one. They got a
wow.
ton of money from Starbucks. They got a ton of money from Pepsi Co. And a couple other like brands in exchange for product placement throughout the movie. And he in the interview talks about how he thought that was so funny because the movie is literally like decrying all of that, and it's pretty anti-capitalist, and is making
Yeah.
this sentiment about how we're all just these mindless consumers, and how we've basically built up a society where our biggest problems are what cheap furniture do we buy. And so he talks in multiple places about how like there's a Starbucks cup in every single scene, but when they did the initial screening of the movie, luckily I guess they got word of it ahead of time. But
Mhm.
the Project Mayhem scene where they roll the art installation into the coffee shop,
Oh, yeah.
Starbucks explicitly said that can't be a Starbucks location. And I noticed that when we were watching before I had read this interview, because I was like, that's weird. Like Starbucks gave them all this money and they're in like every scene, but they're not in the one scene that a coffee shop is actually mentioned.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was quote unquote too much violence for them. And then Pepsi apparently gave them a ton of money and a bunch of Pepsi vending machines, which I thought was hilarious because he said that when they received them from Pepsi, there weren't any restrictions on their use. So he said that they only put them in scenes where there was violence. So like the scene that I noticed it the most after reading that was the Raymond K. Hessel scene where they go and he pulls the gun out, and so they're literally waving a gun at the back of this guy's head threatening to kill him, and there's like a Mountain Dew and a Pepsi vending machine in the
Oh.
back behind the thing.
Yeah.
So it's funny, and there's like a couple other things that they mentioned where there's a Pepsi product on display, and he was like, every scene where there's product placement, there's violence happening, and something where we wanted to show something that, yeah, like Duppy's saying in the chat, something that normally a studio would be like, we can't have our product in this scene because we don't want, where somebody's getting the crap beat out of them or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
that's exclusively where they use those things.
In the commentary, did they mention that line by Helena Bonham Carter where
The I want to have your abortion.
uh-huh.
Yeah, so that one's funny to me on multiple counts because number one, they somehow thought that that was worse than I haven't been fucked like that since
Since
grade
grade
school.
school. Yeah.
And the even funnier thing about that is that she, being a Brit, did not know that grade school was younger than what they consider primary school, which is like junior
Right.
high and high school. So she didn't think anything of it delivering that line and was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then afterwards was like appalled that she had given that line.
Right.
And then that was the correction to the initial one. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually on the Blu-ray, it's one of the special features. You can watch both of the scenes, so you can actually see the
Oh,
original one where she delivers the "want to have your abortion,"
right.
which is such a funny line to me. I don't know why. It's so
But
good.
the fact that the studio was against that line, or like literally anything else, have her
Yeah,
say anything else, and then she says, she says that,
yeah.
um, and then the studio's like, wait, no,
Well, that's what's fun. Like, we had this discussion a little bit when we were talking about Ninja Turtles and how
mhm,
they kind of started to censor the Ninja Turtles, and how in the second one they don't use any of their weapons at all. There's a couple scenes in Fight Club that got quote unquote censored like that I
mm.
think the censored version comes off worse than the uncensored version in a similar way to Ninja Turtles. Like in Ninja Turtles, we talked about how there's the one scene where Shredder beats up a foot soldier,
Oh, right,
um, and they added in post like sounds of him being like so that you thought that he was still alive or whatever, because the intention originally was that he killed the kid.
right.
But it almost makes that scene worse. And in this one, there's a couple scenes like that where he beats up Angel Face, where Jack, is like pissed at him because Angel Face kind of has a little bit more of Tyler's favor when they're splitting up into their groups. Tyler's
Right.
like Angel Face gets to lead his own group. And so then the very next scene is him like beating the crap out of it. And they censored that. The studio said that there was way too much violence over it. So they basically recut the scene so that instead of seeing all the punches with the blood squirting left and right, you just see the people's reactions. And
Right.
I actually think it makes the scene worse, or it's the whole horror trope that what you don't see is
Yeah.
scarier than what you do see, because when
Right.
left to your imagination, what we can think up is always worse. Or RoboCop has the exact same issue. The scene where
Hmm.
they kill Murphy, the unrated or the rated version actually comes off as worse than the unrated
Right.
version, despite the fact that the unrated version is like so much gorier and just so much more gratuitous,
Hmm.
because they're leaving it up to your imagination of like what happened to this
Yeah.
guy to get them to this point. And then all you see afterwards is Angel Faces, like the prosthetics that they put on Jared Leto's face or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, wow. I mean, I can't believe they censored this and ended up somehow making it worse than it was when it was uncensored.
I know, because like I I agree with you that having the censored version, showing the reaction shots as opposed to just the gratuitous violence,
Hmm.
is kind of like it's emotionally worse
Yeah.
because you've got all these dudes who are so ravenous about this fight club and just wanting to blow off some steam, and even they are like, this crosses a line.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, the part that gets me about that is they established pretty well earlier on in the movie what the rules of Fight Club are, and one of the rules is if somebody goes limp, you stop. And
yeah.
so we watching this don't yet know that Tyler and Jack are the same person, but
Mhm.
literally you're looking at one of the founders of Fight Club breaking the rule that he set. And it's like everybody knows he's breaking the rule. Even his alter ego knows he's breaking the rule, and he's
Yeah.
still just going at it.
Right. Yeah, man.
Pretty nutty. Um a
Gnarly
couple other
prosthetics
things.
too.
Yeah, a couple other things that I wanted to mention just because it leads up to something. The fact that they didn't try to censor the opening shot with the gun in his mouth, and then later on in the movie when he actually pulls the trigger,
Uh-huh.
um, they said that they didn't want to show the gun actually being in his mouth when they pull the trigger. So when it actually shows up in the movie, it's like kind of like halfway in there, but
Yeah.
the actual shot, I guess they just used an air gun to blow air into Ed Norton's cheeks. So it went
Right.
like, you know, when
Uh-huh.
they did it or whatever. But also that kind of seems worse to me than if they had just left the gun in there and just kind of like kept it. I mean, they literally travel from his amygdala out to the gun in his
Mhm.
mouth at the beginning of the movie. It's like, we know what this is. You censoring parts of that doesn't make it any better.
Right.
And that it also leads to my favorite joke in the whole movie, which is the flashback humor line that I freaking absolutely love that line. If anybody didn't notice it, they show that scene twice in the movie. Once at the very beginning where Tyler asks him, and he responds, and the second time they show it, the line is different
Mhm.
because at that point that they're showing it a second time.
Right.
Um, so love that. Absolutely love that. And he even calls it out. I think he says like, "Ooh, flashback humor. I love it," or something like that. It's really good.
Yeah,
Let's
dude.
see. Oh, that was another thing that they wanted to censor, the whole car crash scene. The studio the studio was apparently really adamant about him cutting that scene out
What?
because because they thought it would like lead to kids trying to do that on the
Oh
freeway
god.
or on the roads or
Yeah.
whatever. And they, I guess they had a ton of fights back and forth about that because it's so, I mean, how can you cut that scene out of the movie when it
Right.
legitimately is like one of the biggest disputes between Tyler and Jack, and really kind
Yeah.
of sets up the whole pre-reveal conflict of the two sides. I mean, the
Yeah.
guys in the back seat are seeing one guy arguing with himself
Right.
essentially, and their
Exactly.
expressions show that.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, you're like, you're not tuned into that just yet. So,
Yeah, man.
oh, nice,
Do you
Duppy.
remember the because it was around this time there was a controversial movie that came out because it wasn't Any Given Sunday, but it was I think it was Necessary Roughness. It was a football movie, and there was a scene. I didn't see it, but I know there was a scene where a bunch of the football players were lying down in the street and having
Mm.
cars go over them. And I
Hmm.
remember that like ruffled a lot of feathers because they didn't want kids to do that.
I've only seen that movie once, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's like a ton of stuff that people probably think kids are going to do and that they don't want them to duplicate. But, like we talked about again with Ninja Turtles, like kids also were crawling into sewers and storm drains because they thought they were going to see the Ninja Turtles.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, no matter how much you try to censor that stuff, like it really is up to parents to just watch what your kids are
Yeah.
watching, be involved in their lives, and don't let them do stupid things like that.
Yeah. Or at least just, I don't know, hopefully have the wherewithal or love for your children to
Yeah.
give them a baseline of what is dumb and what is allowed. And
Yeah.
because
And again, that even that wouldn't like change. I mean, I'm about to go off on like a rant. Stupid people gonna stupid. Okay.
yeah,
So like, there are people that watched Fight Club that were like that thought Tyler Durden was awesome and that they wanted to like emulate Tyler Durden. And it's like the movie is pretty explicit that he's not a good person and he's doing a bunch of shit. One of the things that I want to say Edward Norton says in it, but in the commentary, he talks about how when he heard people talking about the movie, and he was actually surprised because he expected people on the right, the parents who wanted to censor like albums and stuff like that, like the pro censorship group that was like, we need to censor media because children are, getting their minds warped or whatever. They
yeah,
expected that censorship. But he was saying that he was surprised because there was a little bit of left-wing censorship from people that thought that the movie was like glorifying the violence of being in a fight club, and that
oh
they were trying
yeah,
to show like, oh, look at how cool Tyler Durden is doing all this stuff. And it's like, if they saw it and thought that, then they like missed the whole point of the movie. And he
right.
specifically he talked about how somebody said that it was pro-fascist, and he's like, this movie is only pro-fascist if you don't think of it as basically the perfect example of what goes wrong when a bunch of idiot frat boys start to take themselves too seriously. And I was
Right.
like, that is such a perfect description of the movie, because like, yeah, that's what Project Mayhem is.
Yeah.
Project Mayhem is a bunch of stupid people who did like just needed somebody to follow because they had, I mean, it is kind of the point of the movie, it's like the
Hmm.
boredom that comes with capitalism, and just we get so comfortable because all of our needs are taken care of that
Right.
you turn to all these things to bring excitement back in your life. That's kind of the point of the movie. The whole reason these
Yeah.
guys have this fight club is because they literally have not felt anything in their lives for so long that getting the shit beat out of them is like exciting. It brings back that spark to them.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, that's where you get these frat boys that are like, hey, what should we do now? Oh, let's kick each other in the nuts, like
right.
it's kind of like, yeah. So if you miss, I mean, if you don't get that message from the movie, then like you're never gonna get it. Stupid people are gonna stupid. If you watch the movie and what you took from it is not a denouncement of the types of people that these are, but you think that it's like saying that these are good people and people that you should emulate and hold as role models, then it's like, go watch something else.
right.
Go watch a Disney movie. Go watch the Disney remakes, the live action Disney remakes. Those are for you.
Right.
Those are for you. Or any of the movies, I guess, that nowadays are made with the intention of people being on their phones while they're watching them. They'll explain the
Yeah.
plot to you a billion times. They won't throw
Mm.
anything complex or anything that requires any thought. Just, just digest. Go for it.
Because that's, yeah. Because I bet a lot of people, because of this whole streaming era, are, going down that road because they're getting so used to it. And entertainment is no longer something that needs to stimulate their brains or make them think.
Yeah.
It is mindless.
Yeah.
Just get me
Media
through
literacy.
from dinner to when I go to bed.
Yeah, it's
Um,
media literacy. People have, and I'm not saying this. I guess I am saying it a little bit generally, but I know it doesn't apply to everybody. But the amount of people nowadays that are media illiterate is staggering. That
yeah.
if something is not explicitly stated or shown, excuse me, shown on screen, the fact that people can't infer what a movie is trying to say or what's happens in the movie is absolutely staggering to me.
Hmm.
Absolutely staggering.
Yeah. I think that's why Andor is my favorite Star Wars,
Yeah.
at least in this Disney era,
Yeah.
because nothing is spoon fed.
Hmm.
Like you gotta be paying attention, and everything is subtext, and it's brilliantly written. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's sadly that type of show will never be made again, at
Hmm.
least under the Disney banner. But yeah, because I remember when just a little bit of a side tangent, but like when Andor first came out and I started watching it on Disney Plus at the time, I remember I was just so riveted. And I was like, am I going crazy? Is this like why am I so drawn to this? And then, at the time, like I was on, seeing more and more posts about it on social media and how they loved it. And it's like Star Wars for adults. And, so like I kind of found my people that way where it's like, oh, like I'm not crazy. I'm not just having this psychotic episode where, all of a sudden
Well, we
these
can't be sure
Disney
of that.
Star Wars. Yeah, just because like I was disappointed, Mandalorian was pretty cool because it was brand new. And then, Book of Boba Fett, eh, Obi-Wan, meh. So like then Andor came out and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Had you seen
So
Rogue One before you saw Andor? Have you seen Rogue One, first of all? And did you see it before you saw Andor?
yes.
Okay. Because Rogue One is probably my favorite Star Wars movie, and Andor is my favorite Star Wars property in general, kind of like what you're saying. It's like my favorite Star Wars thing that they've ever released. And that honestly was how I found out that I actually don't like Star Wars. Because everybody was saying that it was so like antithetical to what Star Wars was. And I think I even read somewhere somebody called it like Star Trek in the Star Wars universe. And I was like, oh
Oh,
yeah, that's
interesting.
probably why I like it because I love Star Trek. I love that
Yeah.
Star Trek is just like set dressing for like philosophical stuff that they
Yeah.
talk about and whatever. And Andor's kind of like that. Andor is all about fascism and the lines that are drawn in between that and everything.
Mm,
And I liked Star Wars in that it was like sci-fi, but when
yeah.
people talk about it as like their favorite thing, that never resonated with me
Mm,
until Andor, when we were watching it, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like this is what I've wanted from Star. It's less of the laser swords and spiritual forces and more of
right.
like the relationships between characters and the you know what happens when you stand up for things and how that can bring you like what does it actually mean for the empire to have people in its clutches and stuff, and apparently
Yeah.
that's not what Star Wars is about. It's more about the laser swords and the force and Darth Vaderisms and whatnot, and it was
Hmm.
like, okay, I guess I don't like Star Wars then because that's the one Star Wars thing that I liked in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
is the least like all that stuff. So,
But one way, one way to tie this all back into Fight Club, um, the director for Return of the Jedi, um, was having, because originally George Lucas wanted Steven Spielberg to
Mhm.
direct Return of the Jedi, back in 82, 83 when they were developing it, whatever. And but he couldn't, because he was part of the Directors Guild,
Mhm.
and because George Lucas was basically financing Star Wars himself, he couldn't pull from the Directors Guild to actually have somebody
Mm.
direct a movie from the Directors Guild. So he hires this, guy from Europe, and he just was not well versed in like heavy visual effects style of shooting, of directing.
Mhm.
Because I mean, really, you do have to kind of have that skill. I mean,
Well, yeah, like we
if
talked
you're,
about with David Fincher. You have to
yeah,
know, you have to be able to visualize in your head what the end product looks like so
yeah,
that you can film the raw footage to accommodate that.
exactly. Because that's why I wanted to bring it back to David Fincher, because like that, it's another reason that I totally respect him as a director, because I don't know, before Fight Club, I don't think he ever had something that was this CG heavy. And yet, I mean, again, it's not like, a Marvel movie CGI heavy,
Mhm.
but more CGI than he had ever previously done. And yet, he was still able to visualize it and just have a knack for it, not having ever done it before to this degree. And it's like, just a man. I hear it's pretty difficult to work with him, because he loves to have 30, 50 takes,
Yeah.
until they get it right,
Yeah.
which is probably a nightmare for actors who work with him. But the end result,
See, that's funny
I'm
because it
always a big
seemed
fan
like
of.
in the commentary, the actors seem to love that about him. Like I can totally
Mm,
see how that would be a pain in the neck. But all three of the actors were like, were talking about how they appreciated that he was such a perfectionist because
mm.
he wanted to get what was like. That's actually one of the things that when we were watching it the second time with Kelly, the scene where Marla, they're coming out of one of the groups or whatever, and Jack chases after her, and she walks out in the street. It's the first time he gives her his phone number, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
the cars are whizzing by.
yeah, and I was like, that has to be CG. Like they had to like composite the, she's just walking out and back on an empty street, and they composited the cars in.
Mhm.
And no, they filmed that, and they did 34 takes of it, and Ed Norton talks about in the commentary how the one thing that he remembers from them filming that was the sound of the cars hitting the buttons on her jacket. That's how close they got. That her jacket is like
Whoa.
flapping in the wind, and he's like that the sound of the buttons just being like ding 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 as they like get whipped out by the cars like passing by her. And apparently she just
Dang.
like a boss just walked out, turned around, walked back, turned around, walked back. And I was like,
Wow.
I for sure thought that that was CG. Now,
Yeah.
apparently they did film, it was underrun or whatever, so they filmed it at a slightly faster frame rate or whatever and then slowed it down.
Oh,
So the
yeah.
cars are moving faster than they were actually moving, on the day and on the date or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, like stuff like that is like 34 times. She had to do that 34 times with real cars driving past her back and forth. I think there's also a scene where Ed Norton, he runs out into the street. He's got like the papers and the folders after he escapes from the police station when they're about to
Mhm.
castrate him. He's like running through the street, and they filmed that a bunch of times. And that was actually, like stunt drivers to make sure that they didn't hit him or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently the drivers in the Helena Bottom Carter scene or the Marla scene or whatever, I guess they weren't officially stunt drivers. They were like trained drivers, but they weren't like
Yeah.
stunt drivers
Yeah.
because all they were doing was just driving in a straight line back and forth. But just the
Right.
timing, they wanted to get the timing right. So they did it over and over and over until they got the actual timing right. Another scene that they filmed a bunch of takes on is the scene where Jack and Tyler are selling the soap to the lady at the department store.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they filmed it. They redid the scene a bunch of times because there's a lady in the background that's just walking a loop over and over and over again. And David Fincher wanted her to show up in frame at a very specific point between them at the very moment that they say we were selling the rich lady's fat asses back to them. So they
Oh,
filmed that something like 40 times so
wow.
that she got in the, like as she was walking, because I guess her speed like was changing as she was walking. She wasn't walking at the same speed the whole time. And
Yeah.
so he kept having to tell her, like, keep going, keep going. We're just going to keep doing this over and over and over again. And I guess, the scene that's in the movie is the one where they got her right in between them at the time he says that line.
Wow. And that's not even a very long scene either.
No, no, it's not. But again, like he knows exactly what he wants on in the frame, on the film, when it's on, on screen. And if it's
Mhm.
not that, we're doing it again. We're doing it again.
Wow.
Even they talked a little bit about how the scene where Ed Norton beats himself up,
Yeah.
how difficult it was to film that because they had to do multiple takes of that, and every
Right.
single time. And Ed Norton actually did throw himself onto the table. It's a sugar glass table or whatever, so it's
Sure.
not real glass, obviously. But they had to do that multiple times, and they talk about how they had to vacuum up the glass, reset the table, and then do it again, and then do it again. And he's
Whoa.
like, the cut that's actually, or the shot that's actually in the movie is one where Ed Norton purposely he had like a fake blood on his arms or whatever, and he
Yeah.
rubbed it into the sugar glass so that it stuck on his hands. So it wasn't even the last
Oh,
take they did. They did a bunch of takes of this, and it wasn't even the last take, because he just got the idea at one point to like rub his arms in the glass so that when they come into frame, there's like little bits of glass all over his arm.
I remember seeing that when I watched it a couple days ago. I was like, oh,
Uh-huh. All for the craft,
I
man.
forgot
All for the
about that
craft.
because I mean, just seeing that, just that visualization, it's like, ugh, all that
Mm-hmm.
glass embedded in your arm. Ouch.
Mm-hmm. But I will also say that even for somebody that has like that singular vision and that can see exactly what he wants on the screen, the amount of collaboration that it sounds like they got from everybody in the movie for these different scenes, like it sounds like David Fincher not only, you know, like once he gets what he wanted, he's still willing to run through it again just to see if anybody else has any ideas for like
Yeah.
what to do. So like one of the scenes is Brad Pitt riding around on the bicycle while Jack is reading the Reader's Digest that his name comes from.
Right.
Which apparently was like a real thing in Reader's Digest. I guess people remember it was John in Reader's Digest, but John's esophagus and John's stomach
Oh,
and
yeah.
John's bowels or
Medulla
whatever.
oblongata.
Yeah, yeah. That's from a real series that was in Reader's Digest. And they ended up renaming because they couldn't get Reader's Digest to sign off on actually using like the name of the magazine. So it's The Annotated Reader is the name of it. And there's a scene where he's flipping through the annotated readers. And there's two parts that they filmed that were suggestions from Brad Pitt and Ed Norton. And one was there's a part where Ed Norton flashes a flashlight at Tyler as he's doing that. And apparently Brad Pitt was completely naked in that. He's completely nude under the bathrobe that he's wearing when he's riding around the bicycle.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a shot somewhere that is nowhere to be found, but it was filmed, they said, where when he flashes the flashlight, you can just see Brad Pitt's butt because he like lifts it up as he's riding the bike, and it's like a perfect moon shot. And that was the one that they wanted to use, and they wouldn't let him use it. So we get the front shot of Edward Norton instead, and he flashes the light, and you see Brad Pitt driving towards the camera instead of
Oh.
away from it. But then on another take, Brad Pitt fell off the bicycle. And so they were like, hey, we got this, but in the next one, I'm gonna fall off the bike again. I thought that was funny. And Fincher was like, yeah, go for it. And so they did it again, and Brad Pitt is like, it's not even the best take, but it's like in the context of it, it was like, again, the 30th take that they did or whatever. And that they just decided to keep it because it was the only one where they did the whole thing around. They got the flashlight, and then he falls off the bike.
Yeah, I know. Because so it's like it's David Fincher does have this, he is notorious for doing so many takes over and over and over until he gets what he wants. But you got to appreciate as well that he is also collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Tarantino or to some extent the Coen brothers, who are like, just say what's on the page.
Yeah, don't
And let's
improv, don't
move
ad
on.
lib. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's, it's borderline that with Fincher, but he also still has this side to him where he's just very collaborative and creative and kind of likes the creative process too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also makes me think about like we've talked a few times about the censorship and stuff like that, but to me again, I view this movie as like art. So when I see something that David Fincher has done, I'm looking at it from the context of like an artist making art, and it makes me think of how many movies have been changed because a studio or an executive or something wants to dabble in in that stuff. It kind of makes me think of what is I'll think of it later, but stuff that they even wanted to change in this movie that Fincher was just like, no, 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 no. Because like one of the things that they mentioned in the commentary is that the scene with Chloe, the girl with cancer, that talks about like how she has lubes and toys and stuff at her apartment or whatever,
Right.
like how sad that was supposed to be and how tragic that whole scene is supposed to be. And apparently the studio wanted more footage. They wanted them to film it because when they did the first test screenings, they said it wasn't funny enough. They thought that scene was supposed to be funny, that you were supposed to be like, oh, ha, 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 she's got sex toys and stuff. It's like, this is a dying woman you're talking about. She's literally terminally ill. It's not supposed to be. It's only supposed to be funny in like the satirical sense of like how tragic the whole thing is that you can't help but laugh. And I guess the note that they gave him was that it wasn't funny enough. It's like, thank God they didn't have final cut or final say on that or whatever. Because geez, like.
But it's pretty rare to have a director have final cut anyway. So
yeah.
Producers are always gonna get their little sticky fingers in it to some degree.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I totally understand that. A producer, if you're doing the work to make a movie come to life, like you want to put your stamp on it. You want parts of it to like reflect what you're doing. It's just odd to me that when people go into working with people like Fincher and the Coen brothers, that like I almost feel like at that point the expectation should just be, just let them run. Like these are people that know what they're doing. They're artists. They have a vision. If you don't like that vision, then why are you involved with a movie like this?
Yeah.
It's very odd to me.
Yeah.
Anything
else on your list?
Yeah, I'm trying to see the opening tracking shot that we talked about a few times. Fun fact about that was that was one of the last CG things to be done for the movie. The studio actually wanted them to just have it as all black with white text over it, and Fincher had to, because they were over budget, and Fincher had to convince them like, hey, I'm going to cut the screening together. If you like it, you got to let me make this opening, but it's going to cost some extra money. And obviously they let him do it. But apparently that was like, hey, if you like this, you got to let me make this shot because this is how I want to open the movie. And awesome, just awesome opening to a movie, especially with that Dust Brothers music. Like Kelly and I had it cranked when we were watching it last night. And it was incredible.
Yeah.
Meatloaf's fat suit, they made two of them, so I didn't even know he was wearing a fat suit.
Hmm.
I always just remembered Meatloaf as being a bigger guy, but apparently he lost a ton of weight before this movie. So they actually had to put him in a fat suit and they had to make two of them, one with nipples and one without, because David Fincher saw a lady on the subway with a shirt where her nipples were like very, very prominent and he thought it was hilarious. So he wanted that to be like Bob's bitch tits or whatever. He
Uh-huh.
wanted the nipples visible through the shirt, but he didn't think that they would get it past censorship. So they made two versions of the suit, one with the nipples and one without, um, which I thought was pretty dang funny.
I mean, I figured the bitch tits were prosthetics, but I didn't
Yeah,
realize it was like a
yeah, no, the
complete
whole
fat
thing.
suit.
The whole
Wow.
thing, and apparently it was filled with like sand and rice or something, or sand and sunflower seed, because they wanted Fincher wanted it to spill over his belt line. He didn't
Yeah.
want it to be. They wanted originally to make it just from foam, and apparently the final suit weighed over 100 pounds because
Yeah.
they wanted it to feel like it had like weight to it, so that when they're crying and he's shaking, it's not just like stuck in place. He wanted it to actually
Right.
like move up and down as if it had some weight.
Man.
Um, let's see, what else do I have? The scene where they're running out of the hotel lobby when they're all dressed in the like waiters outfits after they threaten the commissioner and
Yeah.
threaten to castrate him.
Yep.
Uh, they filmed that a couple times, and I guess on the last take, Meatloaf pulled his pants down as if he was going to the bathroom after they were done. So in the movie, it's the shot that they actually used in the movie. He's pulling his pants up and doing his belt when you see them all run out of the building. I never noticed it the first time. It's hilarious when you see it after the fact.
That's funny.
What else? The smoke ring. The smoke ring when Tyler Durden dies
Mm.
after Jack shoots himself in his mouth was a real smoke ring that Brad Pitt, they piped some with like a compressed air gun, they piped some smoke in his mouth. And he
Oh.
said it's the first and only time he's ever done a smoke ring. They didn't intend for it, but
Oh.
when he says the line, there's a smoke ring that comes out, and I guess it's perfect. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
I would have thought that was CGI.
that's what I would have thought. And
Yeah.
man, unless they were being sarcastic and I just missed it in the commentary. But they mentioned it several times and they talk about how it's a perfect smoke ring. So if it is CG, then that went over my head. So maybe I'm the one that's media illiterate. I don't know. But that was pretty cool. Paper Street, that's another clue about Tyler, is the phone number that he gives to Marla is the phone number for his apartment that gets blown out. But when
Oh.
she calls the Paper Street house, which would be impossible for her. And I think there's like a throwaway line about how he gave her his forwarding number or something like that.
Yes.
But also, and this is more so from the book, because I'm pretty sure the book uses the same thing, but the
Yeah.
name Paper Street is the term that cartographers and map makers use when they're planning a street, but it hasn't been built yet. Those are called paper streets because they
Oh.
only exist on blueprints and paper, and they're not real in real life. So before a street
Right.
is built, that's called a paper street. I thought that was a little fun fact.
Huh.
And then the
Nice.
smiley face on the side of the building.
Oh yeah.
The flames and the smiley face on them, that was CG. I thought that there's a billion different
No.
ways that they could do that. That was just CG because
Yeah.
they wouldn't let them do that to the building. They didn't have enough money or whatever, so they didn't let them do it.
No, that's understandable.
And that's all I have. That's the end of my list of notes. But our whole discussion today makes me want to watch They Live now.
They Live.
John Carpenter, yeah.
Uh
Have you seen it?
no.
Oh,
I mean, I have The Thing. I own The Thing, but I have not seen They Live.
okay. Then maybe we should do They Live for our next after the credits.
Yeah.
That
They Live.
They Live, John Carpenter, starring Roddy Piper.
Oh man. Is that an 80s movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. and I guarantee you've heard a million references from it. Did you ever play Duke Nukem as a kid?
No.
No. Damn.
Yeah.
There's a line from the movie. I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum. That's from Duke Nukem. and he says something similar in They Live, but that's where they pulled it from. He actually got the line wrong in the game. But
Oh, okay.
there's a ton of very memorable quotes that I'm sure you'll recognize from that movie.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
I know, because that's why I do enjoy seeing older movies, especially if I haven't seen them before, because more than likely I'll run across something that has just kind of trickled into our culture or the zeitgeist or whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah.
yeah, because
They
I've been doing that with my kids lately, like because they keep talking about shit that have or has coming back around because it a lot of 90s shit is becoming popular again, and like I'll call them out. I'm like, oh yeah, well, what's the original? Like, where did this actually come from? So
it's funny.
I'm educating my children on the origins of things.
That's funny that you say that because there's a scene in Fight Club when they're hitting cars with baseball bats, and it
Mhm.
was Brad Pitt and Ed Norton's idea that the last car that they hit should be one of the, at the time, new Volkswagen Bugs,
Right.
because they hated them so much because they felt like it was the boomer generation regurgitating their culture. The VW Bug was supposed to be the sign of like peace and freedom, and
Mhm.
Volkswagen had packaged it up in a nice consumer friendly version to the point where people used to like put flowers into the dashboard, and they'd have to like put it in
Yep.
through the little crease where the vents were. But the new VW Bug had like, it was molded into the plastic. They had a little flower holder, and they were like, "Oh, we hate this fucking car. We should put that in and have that be one of the cars that they like, smash the windows in or whatever." So that's funny because it's literally what's happening now is like stuff from our generation
Mhm.
is now being reprocessed and recycled and refiltered for our kids, which I guess is good from a marketing perspective or like a sales perspective because we want to watch it for nostalgia's sake, and they're watching it because it's still entertaining. But now, the corporations are getting new customers, new consumers that are now
Mhm.
also into those properties.
Yeah.
Anyway, They Live. I mean, that's has a lot of the same anti-consumer, anti-capitalist sentiment as Fight Club.
Oh,
Very,
cool.
very, very, very thematically similar. Very thematically similar.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm making an executive decision. That's the next movie we're watching. So we're watching Seven for Double
Next
Take,
week
and then after the credits, we'll watch They Live.
in 2 weeks.
They Live.
Got that, folks?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
this
with
is
that
my
being
show
said,
now.
thanks all who attended. Um, as you may have noticed, Hidden Movie Club, the YouTube channel, is now back to Elon Osborne. So it is, youtube.com/at Elon Osborne. But the new banner shows that it is my name, but on the side there's the Elon Music, and on the other side is the HMC Hidden Movie Club logo. So they are all one now underneath the Elon Osborne banner. So I'm excited to continue on this journey, but Hidden Movie Club isn't going anywhere. I really enjoy talking about movies and seeing movies I've never seen before.
Spoiler alert: Elon and I are the same person. I'm
Didn't
his
know
I'm his
that.
cooler, wilder alter ego.
You are, though, because you
Yeah.
don't have kids, and
Yeah.
.
Well, subscribe to our newsletter. Even subscribe to the YouTube channel and everything, but subscribe to the newsletter because we're going to be doing a giveaway. So if you want a copy of Fight Club,
Yeah.
um, you know, sign up, join our paid subscribers, and we'll pick from the paid subscribers to give away a copy of the movie or the movie we're doing next time. So Seven or They Live or one of our previous movies. We kind of
Yeah.
leave it open ended. We just want to share physical media with people because in addition to getting cool movies, you get to keep them forever, even if they go off of streaming. And most, if not all of them, have amazing special features that talk about the production of the movie, all the thought and the craft and the
Mhm.
just absolute talent that goes into making all these movies. If you're into that and you want to see how the sausage is made, how the movies are made, grab the physical media. The commentaries and behind the scenes stuff is incredible for most of these.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give our audience some homework this week.
Ooh.
So if you are watching this right now, live stream or on demand, or if you're listening to the podcast version, this week, I really want you to watch something with commentary, if at all possible. If you have a disc, a DVD back in the day, if you have a DVD player, somehow try and get your hands on the commentary track of one of your favorite movies, and just watch it with commentary. When is the last time that you watched a commentary version of a movie that you love?
If you need recommendations, hit us up in chat or in the comments or anywhere. There's a ton of them that are great. I would be happy to recommend a few of them.
Yeah. So that's your homework. Commentary. When's the last time you did it? You might love it, and then it just starts you on this rabbit hole of watching more and more tracks or more movies with the commentary track.
Yeah. Movies are magic. They're literally magic.
It's really hard to make a movie in general.
You know what's funny is I used to laugh. They started putting at the end of a lot of movies a count of how many people worked on a movie, and it started as like an anti-piracy thing. They were like, by watching this film in the theater or by purchasing this disc, you've supported X number of jobs, and it would be like 11,484 jobs that worked on this movie, whatever, blah 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 blah. And I used to laugh at that because I was like, wow, that's a really crappy way to like, what is that going to do to keep people from pirating a movie? By the time they've gotten to that part of the movie, they've already seen the whole thing and they pirated. Right. But I actually have a new appreciation for that because it legitimately shows you how many people, 11,000 people or however many people, had to get together in an orchestrated manner to make this movie happen and for you to see what you've seen on the screen. And I don't know how many of you that actually watch have tried to make a movie or have ever had to film something or record it or edit something in post or do compositing for a movie or any of that stuff or acted in. The amount of people that it takes to make these things in the way that they make them with the vision that and thought and everything is absolutely incredible. So if you can buy a movie on physical media and support the people that make this stuff, by all means, please do. And more importantly, if you ever find smaller films that you like, buy the media. Find ways to give the people that make these movies your money. Because you're voting with your wallet. The more money you give them, the more they're able to make more movies like this.
Physical media for life, folks. Yeah. Thanks again for joining us. You're cool. Everybody's cool.
Life is cool. Be cool. Stay in school.
All of that. We'll see you next week for 7. Derek and I do Double Take.
Yeah.
Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's the difference with Double Take. But yeah, once again, hiddenmovieclub.substack.com. You get our free newsletter every week, and join our $5 tier if you want to do that as well. Thanks for the support. You rock. See you next week.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Peace.
Bye.